My purpose was not to take sides on that issue. My purpose was just simply to say, we have a new school board. We need to give them the opportunity to do the best they can to represent the interests of our kids and try to provide the best educational opportunities that we can here in El Paso.
That was former El Paso State Senator Jose Rodriguez with some observations about Tuesday night's El Paso ISD board meeting. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra Sunday. I'm Mark Ross with my guest Israel Arobali and Dee Margo, and we are discussing the challenges of being on a school board in El Paso and the lessons learned from being on the board. Gentlemen, in researching tonight's topic, I came across the Texas Association of School Boards website and their list on how to be successful on a school board. There are 5 tips for new members. The first is understanding your role as a board member being key. Second, peers and mentors are important resources. 3, don't be afraid to ask questions, but listen intently too. 4th, you can never be too prepared for board meetings. And 5, your local orientation covers a lot, but probably not everything. So, Mr. Arobali, according to the Texas Education Agency, there should be 3 hours of local district orientation within the first 120 days of being on a school board. And that's just one of the many requirements from the State Board of Education and TEA. How long did the orientation last for you when you joined the board?
It's the state mandate of 3 hours, and I'll tell you, you go through everything in this school district. You learn about every department, what their function is. You jump into the budget, you jump into legalities, ethics, everything. The reality,
it's all in one session?
All in one session, and the reality is 3 hours is not nearly enough time to understand the duties and responsibilities of this district and how it operates. And subsequently, there are trainings offered by TASB later on, but there's not a mandation of focusing on governance, which is one of the main things, is knowing your role. And the reality is we do it because it's a legal requirement, but it stops there at the local, then it's put on going to TASB conferences, going online and doing those kind of trainings that don't necessarily help, to be quite honest. It's kind of like in HR, right? You get a new job, you have to take the HR video of what sexual harassment is. Is it really getting to the core of what the issue is? Is it really training you to be better? And the reality is the Texas legislature needs to look at this. And you know, I'm a huge advocate of training. And perhaps there's a mandated training that every new trustee in the state of Texas goes through immediately, because what we saw was massive decisions made in the first weeks of new tenured trustees, and no trainings have happened. And I'll give you another example, the timing. New trustees are elected in May through May elections. The very first thing that you vote on is your budget. To what Mayor Margo mentioned is, you have such a massive budget in EPISD. How can you, with 1 month's time, know the operations, make sense, heads or tails of what's happening, and vote on it?
And what about team building? Was that part of the process in that 3-hour span?
It's not. So in EPISD, I can speak to that, is it's only, during my time, I attended as board president with the new trustees, but it was just the new trustees and the board president. So it's not all 8 team members being there. It's not everyone. It was a superintendent, board president, new trustees. There is a mandate for team of 8 training through TASB or through the requirements, but it's extremely difficult to pull, as I said, herding cats earlier, especially with the polarization that we're seeing right now.
Now, according to TEA, there should be orientation to the Texas Education Code, evaluating and improving student outcomes, and the Open Meetings Act, among other requirements. How were those qualifications met? I mean, does it all happen within that first 120 days?
The orientation, the local orientation of 3 hours, that happens in the first immediate, that's, for me, it was within the first 2 weeks of being elected. The other ones are offered through TASB's online portal. And so it's videos that you watch, you sit there and you go through. Some of them require you to take competency tests to make sure that you understood what happened. Some of them are just YouTube videos that you can literally click at the end and say, I did this, here's the link and here's the code. And so unfortunately, you're relying heavily on the trustees to take on that responsibility and really follow through with these trainings.
And Mr. Margo, when you were on the board of managers, what type of orientation did you get from TEA or even TASB?
The same thing. I remember we had a consultant come in and speak before us, and I think we opened it as an open meeting and handled it that way. And then I had lots of conversations with Michael Williams, who at the time was Commissioner of Education, because when I walked in, the prior trustees had been in a search for a new trustee because of Garcia incarceration and guilty plea. And I remember there was a consultant out of Chicago, and they had 11 names, and we did not think any of them qualified. So we threw them all out and reopened the process, and I spent lots of time talking to Michael Williams about what kind of person do we want, and how do we want that person to be, and we arrived at a situation where it didn't necessarily need to be another former superintendent. Sometimes I thought the superintendent carousel was people building up their resumes and just moving every 3 years. And I wanted character and commitment to El Paso and the district. And so we started over and looked at atypical candidates. And that was how we selected Juan Cabrera. And I think he got us out of, we were on probation. He got us off of probation. We revamped a lot of things. We did a lot of new things.
But he also ended up getting in trouble as well.
Well, I think it was innuendo, but it was, to my knowledge, and I wasn't involved, but there was nothing tangible that he was it was more innuendo, and he resigned. So that was it. But I understand there was nothing substantive there, from what I gather. But as I say, I wasn't there, and I wasn't involved on that. But what I liked about what we did as a board of managers is that we were all at large, and our entire focus was the entire district collectively, and that's the way we operated. And when you look at governance and issues, there's too much parochialism. Well, my schools take precedent over your schools in your district, or I want that money here, and not why do you get that money and I don't, irrespective of the fact that may be a bigger priority over there. And it needs to be an understanding that this is a collective effort on behalf of the entire district, and I don't see that. I hadn't seen it in the past, and their actions, and Israel is correct. Their primary focus should be on the budget first and foremost. They made a decision to move certain personnel decisions up to the trustees. That's in direct violation of basic governance. How do you make a decision on an employee at a trustee level when you've had no oversight? You've not been involved with them. You don't know what's going on. You're not HR. The only time trustees should ever be involved is for a disciplinary action that's gone through the process and been kicked out. But that's what I thought, that's ludicrous. Talk about a direct violation of basic governance and fiduciary responsibility. You don't make employee decisions at the trustee level. That was one of the main things that was being done by the prior trustees, who were thrown out in 2012, ultimately in 13, that they were in there making decisions on making principals deal with certain teachers. And that all came out in all the reports and the filings and the litigation and the criminal aspects of it. It's wrong. They have no business doing that. Now, they can take employee actions with the superintendent and the internal auditor, but that's it. That's all they have.
And Mark, I'll tell you, when I became a new trustee, again, going back to that training aspect and understanding the governance role, I actually was one of the trustees that put DCDK, which are the hiring authorities of the superintendent, on the agenda to elevate it to the board to make key decisions. It was high school principals and above would come to the board for final say. And I did that for 2 years at this level. And I got to tell you, what I learned is more comments were being made about resumes and typeface and mistakes here and there. And it was not about the quality of the person. That's the superintendent that knew. And so shortly after Superintendent Saavedra came on, we as a board decided to reverse that decision and give her control to make hiring decisions, because we were not qualified for that.
True.
It's not our business. We should be focused on oversight. So if she hires someone, it's my job to set the metrics and say, okay, if you don't meet this, I'm going to hold you accountable because you hired ABC person. And if you don't address it, then we're going to hold it against you in your evaluation.
And that's no different than what we did at the city when I was mayor. The city manager was in charge of every department. And I had to remind the rest of the council members that employee decisions were the purview of the city manager. You had 2 hires as a member of city council. That at the time I was there was the city manager and the city attorney. I wanted the internal auditor to be hired by that, but at the time it was designated to be hired by the city manager, reporting to city council. But they have now changed it, so they have 3 now, which are the proper ones. But everything else emanates through that. You hold those people accountable for whatever goes on, primarily the city manager.
Still to come, what advice would our guests offer the members of any school board in the El Paso area? Stay with us. You're watching ABC 7 Extra Sunday.